so let's take a look at the Thorn Nomad Mark III, manufactured by Thorn Bicycles, based in Bridgewater in Somerset. This is their light touring model. It comes between their Audax frame and the Nomad frame, which is the heavy-duty touring frame. I've got one of those, which I'll talk about the comparisons actually in a moment. But this, like I say, this is the lighter touring frame. This is, and the heart of every Thorn bike, every single Thorn bike, the key thing about that makes this bike special is the frame. The frame and the quality of the steel that's used in this bike is phenomenal. This is Reynolds 853 tubing throughout, forks, stays, everything. You'll often find on high quality or high-end bikes that 853 may be used for the main triangle, but not often for the stays and not often for the forks. So this is Reynolds 853 throughout, and it's fantastic steel because it is tapered, so the steel is thicker where their strength is needed in the joints, and thinner in the midsection of the tubes to save weight. And it's beautifully manufactured. The brazing on this bike is fantastic. They are made, I think, in Taiwan. I think all Thorn frames used to be made in the UK, hand built in the UK, but they outsourced that some years ago now, about 10, 15 years ago probably. But the quality that they're achieving is still absolutely fantastic. The build quality of this frame is sensational, and the paint finish, this is gunmetal grey, is absolutely beautiful. It's a gorgeous frame. And the other thing to say about the frame is that it's fully loaded with all the fittings you could ever want. You've got bosses for your water carriers on the down tubes. You've also got another set of bosses on the bottom if you're carrying a third water container on the bottom, or you're carrying a fuel canister there. That's a really fantastic feature for a long distance ride. So that's the cable mountings. I'll show you in close up actually, but the cable mountings on this bike are extraordinary. There are so many. They're so beautifully made. Everything is beautifully designed and thought through. So the quality of the design of this bike is sensational. The forks have got a lovely retro bow to them, and these are they do three types of fork for this. So they do a sort of wider fork for wider tyres. They also do a sort of more slender fork, slightly more slender, lighter fork. If you're going to set this up for Audax riding, that would probably be the fork to go for. This is the middle fork, so it's a combination of strength and lightness on this one. It's got that lovely curve, and the unique thing about the steel is it's such a resilient material. It does, that fork sucks up a lot of the road buzz and vibration that you get. It's particularly on light gravel. It's very, very comfy. It's such a springy, the whole frame is very springy and lively actually. It gives you a lovely ride, very comfortable in this setup, but also quite lively and surprisingly compliant in terms of absorbing the bumps and the gravel. And I've got no suspension at all on this bike. I do have, on the Nomad, I have a seat suspension, NCX seat suspension on that, but not on this one, and I wouldn't put it on this one, to be honest. I don't think this is mainly good quality gravel and country lanes for me, this one, and it does bowl along beautifully. So yeah, the fork's beautifully compliant. The rear triangle, the length, overall length of the bike is shorter than the Nomad. I would say 2 or 3 inches shorter than the Nomad. Doesn't present any problems. You don't get that, there's ultra stability of the Nomad, but it's plenty of clearance for panniers on the rear, and no issues with toes at the front at all. Plenty of clearance there, as you can see, lots. So yeah, it's quite as modern bikes go, it's quite a long bike, and that gives a really comfortable ride over long distances. So it's a fantastic frame. That's what Thorn bikes are all about. It's this. The components, most people could acquire the components and build up a good bike, but the frame makes this bike completely. Right, so looking on some of the other components and features of this bike. The wheels. The wheels are DT Swiss. This is 460s, both front and rear. This one is obviously got the rim for the V-brake on the front. So you've got the XT V-brake on the front. You've got the TRP Spyke cable operated disc brake on the rear. And that's the combination that Thorn recommend. They strongly recommend that combination. And I know that there's been debate about the TRP cable operated brakes all over the internet. I have to say I found them absolutely fantastic. So simple to work on. You can change the pads simply. You can adjust them easily. If anything goes wrong, you just change a cable. So if you've got a spare cable, you can change that. Not a problem. You don't have to bleed a hydraulic system, which would be I can't imagine anything worse on the trail than having to faff about with that. And the stuff you'd have to carry to do it, I think, would be ridiculous. So I love the cable operated rear brake, fantastic. The XT brake on the front, the V brake is really efficient, great feel on it. I do need to adjust them slightly actually on this bike. I've been tinkering over the winter and I haven't quite got the brakes set up 100% yet, but I'll be looking forward to tinkering a bit more with that. So the stopping power I find fantastic, even in the very wet conditions that I've been riding in recently, you know, through massive puddles and actually lanes that are almost 2 or 3 inches underwater in places. I've never had a problem with stopping power. Now I'm not careering downhill at 45, 50 miles an hour. I'm a slow rider, but nevertheless I feel very, very secure and safe on this bike. The braking is excellent, excellent. So yeah, good setup, I think. The other feature, of course, that I need to talk about on this bike is the Rohloff hub gear. The 14-speed Rohloff hub. This is the speed hub with the Xbox on this side. That is a fantastic piece of kit. Now that's made in Germany by Rohloff. And they've been manufacturing these for, I would say, around 30 odd years, probably more than 30 years now. And these hubs have travelled the world. I mean, you get stories of these hubs doing over 30,000 miles with no problems at all. So they are really strongly built, and they're not, you know, they look big, they look heavy, but the differential between that and a lightweight derailleur is not massive. And for the type of riding I'm doing, touring mainly, and long distance riding, you know, I'm not going to quibble over, you know, a few ounces here or there. And that, I think that, and in fact, you're effectively running a single speed setup. You know, I think it worked. Well, it certainly works for me. Now the hubs come from the factory. Obviously, they're brand new, so there's a really complex gearing system inside these hubs, as you can imagine, to produce 14 speeds. And when they come out mint fresh from the manufacturer, they do take a bit of bedding in. So I would say they take 400 or 500 miles to bed in, and I would do an oil change after 500 miles. I'd do an oil change. Because I've found every time I do an oil change, the hub gets smoother and smoother. And once the rough edges or the milled edges of the cogs have worn slightly in, then it does become silky smooth. And that's the stage this one's at now. You know, I've been riding it for, like I say, 2 years now, and it really has. It did have a little bit of a strange noise in 7th speed when I first got it, and it was slightly notchy in the changes around 7th when I first had it. That's completely gone now. About 800-900 miles or 1,000 miles later, it's now really great. I've done 3 oil changes. I've done 2 oil changes. There was one before I had it, and it's running really, really smoothly. Brilliant hub, bulletproof, and the great thing about the other benefit of a Rohloff hub is means that your rear wheel, the spokes are not dished in any way. They're dead straight. They're shorter spokes because of the large flange on the hub, making these really super strong, these back wheels, very, very strong. I would be surprised if you could easily break spokes on the rear of a Rohloff if the wheel's been built properly, and Thorn build these wheels specifically. and they take a lot of care in lacing these wheels specifically for the Rohloff hub. So if they're done properly, they should be really last you. The great thing about the Rohloff hub, of course, is that it's a twist shift, simple twist shift system, 1 to 14. You've got a great climbing gear on this. I mean, you can climb virtually anything on that. It's so easy. You're really spinning. It's like the most amazing granny gear you can get on your 1x for sure. The only thing is you do lack a bit of puff on 14th gear. You will find you'll run out of gearing on that, but that's not a problem for me. I mean, if you're really going to push it, if you're pushing out the watts, you might want something slightly different, but for me it's never been a problem. Actually quite glad to have the opportunity to have a little freewheel now and again, to be honest. So yeah, the 14 speeds are great. You can change a bunch of gears at once on the Rohloff. So if you suddenly hit a real kicker on a climb, instead of having to drop through the derailleurs, you can shift 3 or 4 gears at once if you really need to suddenly accelerate up a hill, and that is a fantastic feature. The other great thing about it is if you're plummeting down a hill and you get to a junction, all your friends are coming into that junction, you can then quickly shift 7 gears into the right gear to pull away while they're having to pull away in their downhill gear, and you hear them clicking through the gears while you're zooming up the road. So it's fantastic. It's a fantastic, brilliant idea, superbly realised by Rohloff. Marvellous piece of kit. So the Rohloff, I can't recommend it strongly enough. It's just one of the greatest things from my point of view is I was always fiddling with my derailleurs and adjusting the gears and trying to get them to run absolutely perfect. I had terrible trouble with SRAM Eagle gears. They were always getting out of true and jumping, and they were. I didn't get on with them at all. But the Rohloff, you just forget it. You just change gear. You don't worry about your drivetrain at all. And that's a real beauty of when you're going on a long distance cycle ride. One change that I've made over the stock Mercury is the handlebars. I changed out the Thorn provided handlebars, which are really good. The adventure bars are really good. Expedition bars, I think they call them, comfort bars. They've got a similar sort of sweep on them. These are the Alee Denham bars. They are provided by Koga in the Netherlands, and they're manufactured by a company called Satori, which I think is a Japanese company, or I might be getting confused with the whiskey, could be. But anyway, they're manufactured out of aluminium. These are aluminium. You can get them, I think, in steel as well. They've got quite a sweep on them. I would think that's probably maybe 12 degrees, I don't know, but they're certainly swept back, and that gives a really nice, comfortable hand position when you're in your saddle. The other great thing about them is they've got the bull horns, and these replicate the position you would have when you're riding on the hoods on a standard road bike. And I find that really quite useful struggling into a headwind, and also just gives a variety of positions on the handlebars. In fact, there's multiple positions you can achieve with these bars, and I think they've been well designed for long distance bike riding. So I would recommend the Alee Denham bars as an upgrade. I know there are a lot of others out there, the Jones bars. It's a preference thing. I just like these. I've got them on my Nomad as well, and I like this setup. This has got a particularly high stem, which I need because I like a very upright seated position. And I've also got the Richie Riser stem on here, which is, as you can see, pretty much extended, not quite to its full extent, but it gives a lot of height. And you can see my bike saddle level is well below the handlebars Dutch style, which I find particularly comfortable for me. It relieves back pain, neck ache, and it gives me a good upright position. I mean, if I just get on the bike, you'll see exactly what I mean. So I like to ride in an upright position, so that gives me what I need here. So and the bars give you just a little bit more of an aggressive situation. If you were running on a standard stem height here, or a top tube height, steerer tube height, you would certainly be in a much more aggressive position than this. But yeah, I like that as a riding position, comfortable. The bars are fabulous. Yeah, good setup, I like it. So the tyres I've got on, I'm running on the Mercury here, are the Continental Contact Plus. I'd switched recently, actually. They're fairly new on the bike, so I can't really give a good review of those, but they certainly feel fine. They're more lively than the Marathon Plus, I would say, the Schwalbe Marathon Plus. Tough as old boots, brilliant if you're going over rough terrain maybe, but or long distances for sure. But these offer similar puncture protection. They're lighter, a little bit more responsive, quite comfortable tyre, good, reasonably good grip. These are this is mainly set up for road and very light gravel riding, and I've never had a problem with those. They seem to be okay so far. I've only had them on a few months, well maybe 6 months. They're wearing reasonably well. They're looking pretty brand new actually. So yeah, they're pretty good. I like those. The other thing to talk about, of course, the controversial element is the Brooks saddle. I know there will be people watching this video absolutely detest them and would never go anywhere near them. And you know, I can fully understand it, because you buy a new Brooks saddle and you get on it for your first couple of rides and you'll think you've gone into some sort of medieval torture chamber, because they are rock hard out of the box. And that's, you know, just the way they're made. They're made to last a lifetime really, and you know, you do have to break them in. Now, I love them. I've got one that I've had for 30 odd years on the Nomad, and it's really is super comfortable. So I decided to buy a new Brooks saddle. This is the B17 Special with the copper rivets, which I absolutely love. It's a bit of bike porn really. I didn't need the copper rivets, and you can get them a lot cheaper if you don't go for the fancy Dan rivets, but I love the look of it. And it's going to be with me for 30, 40, no, I probably won't be here in 30 years. So it's going to last me out, let's put it that way. But the key thing with a Brooks saddle is to make sure you use the proof hide, particularly liberally underneath, on the underside of the saddle, quite lightly on top. I wouldn't put too much on top. I would put 2 or 3 applications a year maybe on the top, good liberal application underneath. That helps to soften the leather, so when you're riding you will begin to break it in. It takes about 400 or 500 miles on that saddle to get it to start feeling comfortable, but once you've done that, once you've invested your time in breaking this saddle in, it is a thing of wonder, in my opinion. Now you might well possibly disagree with me on that, and you might see this as the devil's own creation, but for me it's a super saddle, and I just love the craftsmanship and the fact that it's been the same since I was riding my bikes to school. 50 years ago I had a Brooks saddle. It was an old black one then. So what else there is there to say about the Thorn Mercury? I think I've covered most things on the bike. I've got the mud guards, obviously SKS mud guards, they came with the bike. There's not a lot of clearance on, these are 40C tyres, I think they're 40Cs, they may be slightly, they might be 42s, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, 42Cs, and I think that's as big as you can possibly go with these, well, with this frame, and also with these forks, and also these mud guards. But you know, I've not really had them bunged up. I'm not trogging off road on single track, so I'm not likely to pick up thick mud on this bike. The Nomad is a different matter, and I've got more clearance on that. Yes, so I mentioned the rack rear light is battery rear light. I find that, you know, as convenient as anything else. I don't know about you, but USB seems to be the more efficient way of maintaining your bike lights, but you know, I'm always faffing about trying to find a cable, and you know, if I don't take the cable with me, or I haven't got somewhere to charge it, batteries are so easy. So that's a battery powered rear light, and that's it really. I think all I can say about the Thorn Mercury Mark III is it's a lovely bike. It's the best bike I've ever owned and ever will own. So if you're thinking of investing a significant wad of money on a new bike and you want it to fit you to perfection, then have a chat with Thorn. This bike now would probably retail at about £3,400, which compared to, you know, the Kogas and some of the other bikes out there is not really, I think it's great value for money actually. I paid well less than that, under 2,000 for this one, which was only about 18 months old when I got it, and it's in perfect as new condition. And the Nomad I got for 800 quid, and that's probably even better condition than this one. So you know, I've shopped around, I've found the bargains. Luckily I've found frames that fitted me, but if you're going for a new bike, you want it to fit you and you want it a bike forever and a bike that will do almost anything, then the Mercury is a really good choice. If you're going to cycle around the world, consider the Nomad, but really, unless you're into extreme distances, this bike is going to be the best bike you'll find on the market, in my opinion. I know everybody has their preferences. That's mine. It's simple. Okay, that's the Thorn Mercury. I hope you enjoyed the video.